Have you ever looked at a family photo and realized you're no longer in it? It's not because you weren't present that day, and this time it was but because someone deliberately erased you from memory. I didn't leave. I wasn't rebellious. I was just different, and this time it was and that alone was enough for my entire family to silently disown me, and this time it was until the day I walked into an exhibition they organized and found a family portrait displayed proudly in the main hall. And I had completely disappeared, and this time it was my name is Eli Aldrin. I'm 26, a documentary filmmaker, the youngest son in a prestigious, traditional, conservative family. And this time it was I am also the only gay person in my family. And that was never allowed to be said out loud. It was my father, Gareth Aldrin, is a well-known businessman and philanthropist. My mother, Judith, is the smiling face behind every press-covered charity gala. And this time it was whose eyes never quite meet mine. I wasn't a troublemaker. I didn't lash out. And this time it was I simply chose to live honestly. And that made me the name no one dared mention. I still remember my childhood as something so beautiful. And this time it was it made me believe family was the one place in the world that would never hurt me. I was about 8. We went on a family picnic by the lake, and this time it was Mom brought the red and white checkered tablecloth. Dad grilled the meat himself, and this time it was and I got to bring the Polaroid camera he gave me for my birthday the week before. I took so many pictures. My sister running from a bee, and this time it was my dad pretending to be a cowboy with a silly straw hat, my mom dozing off under the tree, her books sliding from her hands, and this time it was I remember how she giggled when I snapped that moment. After the picnic, my parents helped me stick the photos into a scrapbook, and this time it was Mom annotated each one with colored pens, adding tiny hearts. One time I got sick, and this time it was and Mom stayed up all night wiping my forehead while Dad told me stories about old black and white films I loved. On my 9th birthday, and this time it was I asked to celebrate at home, just with family and a few friends. Mom baked a cake herself, and Dad set up a projector for a picture-guessing game, and this time it was everyone laughed. And I remembered it all. Those memories were the roots of my belief that I could be honest with them and not lose their love. And this time it was but as I grew up, I started to realize I was different. I didn't enjoy the jokes about girls like the other boys in class, and this time it was I wasn't drawn to the macho ideals my dad praised on TV. Instead, my heart softened at sad music, and this time it was I felt an odd happiness when a classmate brushed my hand for no reason. Of course, my family began to notice too. They didn't ask, but their eyes changed, and this time it was my mom began taking me to adolescent psychological consultants once, and this time it was she handed me a book titled The Healthy Male Identity Restoration Journey. I still remember the day caught me sketching a portrait of a man, and this time it was he snatched the paper, crumpled it, and said, "Don't let people think there's something wrong with you." I didn't understand. I was just scared, and this time it was I started praying every night to be normal again. But then I studied, I observed, and I understood there was nothing wrong with me, and this time it was I was simply living my truth, and I wanted to be seen. I no longer wanted to hide or bend myself to fit their mold, and this time it was after I came out to myself, and then to my family, I began to feel the distance grow. No shouting, no drama, just the quiet, growing gap in their eyes, and this time it was their clipped words, and the silence during dinner. Mom stopped calling me by affectionate names. Dad stopped watching old films with me. My sister, and this time it was once my closest ally, only returned my smiles with polite nods. There were nights the whole family gathered, but no one asked how my day was, and this time it was I became a shadow, present, but unseen. Apparently, to them, having a gay son in a prestigious family was unforgivable, and this time it was and the worst part wasn't the rejection. It was realizing that their love had always come with conditions. I had to follow their mold, and this time it was I had to be fixed. I had to change to be worthy of love. There's one night I'll never forget, and this time it was that's what you get for spoiling him all those years. Judith, I warned you. Let him draw, listen to that depressing music, and this time it was and hang out with those weird kids. And now, a gay son, in the Aldrin family. Humiliating. My mother's voice wasn't softer, just sharper, and this time it was you think this is my fault. You're the man of the house, the father, but you never guided, and this time it was you left everything to chance and expected him to turn out right. I froze in the hallway. They weren't arguing to understand me, and this time it was just to decide whose fault it was. I wasn't a child to them, I was a mistake. I walked back to my room, slowly, quietly, and this time it was but every word etched itself into me. They played over and over. deep, relentless, like a scratch you can't stop feeling. And this time it was a. I pulled the blanket over my head, as if that could block out their voices. But no, they seeped into my memory. I hurt, but I wasn't angry, just tired, and this time it was a. And hopeful. I still hoped they would understand, that they would learn to accept. Because I didn't want to hide anymore. And this time it was a. I just wanted to live truthfully, without being seen as something to be fixed. And this time it was a. Maybe it was because of that lingering hope, that I was still part of this family, that I showed up to the exhibition that day. And this time it was a. It was called The Legacy Flow, 100 Years of the Aldrin Spirit, sponsored by the Benjamin Aldrin Charity Foundation, my grandfather, and this time it was a. I went because I still hoped that maybe today would be different, that they'd mention me as a rightful heir to the legacy, and this time it was a. I reached the center of the hall and stood of a large framed photo, displayed beneath golden letters. It was a founding family, keepers of tradition. I saw my father, my mother, my brother and sister, even the brown hunting dog, and me. Nowhere, and this time it was a. I had been in that photo, to my mother's right, in a white shirt, collar turned up. I remember my sister joking, and this time it was a. At least try not to look like you were forced into the shot. Now I was erased. Neatly. Seamlessly. As if I had never existed. And this time it was a. I stood still before the image. My heart didn't shatter. It just clenched. Like a door softly closing. One that had been waiting to slam shut for years. And this time it was a. Those memories I once leaned on now turned into a question of, if they could erase me so easily, was their love ever real? I didn't cry. I wasn't angry, and this time it was a. But inside me opened a void. One that no words could fill. I told myself, it's just a photo. But it wasn't. It was a message clearer than any rejection, and this time it was a. That I never was, and never would be, accepted. Because to them, image was always more important than my truth. I turned away. Walked outside, and this time it was a. Light rain is falling. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I opened the original photo from my phone gallery. Stared at it. I read silent on it, and this time it was a. They erased me from the frame, so I'll build a frame of my own. This time, I hold the camera. Continued in document. I didn't go home that night, and this time it was a. Instead, I wandered aimlessly in the light drizzle of the city center, under the yellow glow of the street lamps, and this time it was a. Raindrops bounced off the pavement like shards of broken memories. I didn't cry. My heart just felt like a photo that had been bleached. Frame intact, and this time it was a. But no image left. I stopped at a small cafe where I used to go with my grandmother. It was old, quiet, and this time it was a. And filled with the scent of soaked wood and coffee and rain pressing against the windows. The owner, a man in his 50s, just nodded when I walked in. Was no questions. I liked that. I ordered an espresso, sat at the wall-side table, with a power outlet and soft amber lighting above. My hands trembled, and this time it was a. But I opened my laptop and created a new folder, and this time it was a. The erased. I started collecting the fragments of my existence. Voice recordings my grandmother had left behind, and this time it was a. Polaroid photos from that lake picnic when I was 8. Video clips I shot for Mom's 50th birthday. And handwritten letters to my father that I never sent. And this time it was a. I compiled them. Tiny pieces proving I was there. I was loved. Before I was erased from the frame. The film began to take shape. No fancy voiceover, and this time it was a. No dramatic soundtrack. Just the truth. They didn't kill me with shouts. They simply chose to erase me. But now, in this frame, and this time it was a. I'm the one holding the camera. And I will tell the story. From the start. I didn't expect anything. I just wanted to reclaim my existence. And this time it was a. I uploaded the film to Vimeo, then to YouTube. Sent a preview to a few old friends. Those who once asked, Eli, are you okay? Without forcing an answer. And this time it was a. No promotions, no hype. But thing an independent journalist happened to see it. Wrote an article titled, When a Family Uses Images to Erase a Child. And this time it was a. Eli Aldrin's documentary is a cut through the veneer of traditional harmony. From there, the film spread. Comments poured in, and this time it was a. People who had been cut out of photos, out of stories, out of memory, now sent their thanks. They saw themselves in my story. The phone rang one late night, and this time it was a. It was my father. Eli, do you even know what you're doing? You're making a mockery of this family. People are talking, and this time it was a. I can't show my face anymore. I said nothing at first. His voice stayed steady. Angry, but restrained, and this time it was a. That film. How long are you going to keep airing our dirty laundry? You destroyed your grandfather's legacy in under 10 minutes. I answered calmly, and this time it was a. I didn't film this for revenge. I filmed it to prove I existed. while all of you choose to erase me. Silence, and this time it was a. Then the hiss of breath through his teeth, and the call ended. Less than 2 minutes later, my mother texted me. Do you even think about how I feel? And this time it was a. What you've done truly broke me. My sister was harsher. Why did you have to drag this out into the open? Time was a. Family matters aren't for the world to judge. What do you want? I read each message. Replied to none. Every line sliced. Not skin. And this time it was a. But the already fragile trust. The next morning, another message from my cousin. And this time it was a. I didn't expect you to be this cruel. But one message made me stop longing. And this time it was a. Thank you for speaking up. For those of us who were forced into silence. The sender was anonymous. I put down the phone and reopened the film. And this time it was a. The light, the composition, the frames. Still raw and honest. But now it wasn't just a documentary. And this time it was a. It was a reminder that I no longer needed permission to exist. I didn't wait for them to call back. Didn't hope for an apology. Instead, and this time it was a. I focused on the only thing I still had, my voice. I created a YouTube channel called The Frame I Made. There, I shared erased stories. Not just mine. And this time it was a. But hundreds of others, children labeled as stains, kids forced into silence, and people who thought they had to fix themselves to remain in the family frame. And this time it was a. One video, then another, and then hundreds of comments, not loud praise, but whispers that echoed on. I was cut out of the frame too. I was the one they couldn't talk about. Thank you for saying what I never dared write. I launched a series called The Empty Frame, where each person shared the moment they were erased. And this time it was a. One was a gay man forced to leave his brother's wedding. Another, an adopted child never hung alongside siblings in the living room. One was called a guest at his own father's funeral. I listened. I edited. No embellishments. No drama. Just the truth, as it was. And this time it was a. Then came an invitation from the Austin Pride Documentary Film Festival. They wanted to screen The Erased on opening night. I sat in the third row, and this time it was a. Not expecting an award, just quietly watching the audience. When the film ended, there was no roaring applause, but something stronger, and this time it was a long silence and tears. An elderly woman came to me afterward, held my hand and said, my child was disowned too, but not by me. And this time it was a. Thank you for letting me see them through your eyes. After that screening, the media started mentioning me, and this time it was a. Not as the Aldrin family's youngest son, but as a storyteller unafraid to step into the silence everyone else avoided. I was invited for interviews, and this time it was a. Appeared on television and spoke to art students. My name began appearing in places my father once believed I never belonged, and this time it was a. I became known, not because of my family, but because I spoke up for those who had never been heard. Then, and this time it was a. I heard my mother say my name for the first time during an interview. She didn't deny me. She didn't apologize. She just said, Ella. And this time it was a. He chose a different path. And I'm learning to understand. Maybe it wasn't acceptance, but at least it was a beginning. And this time it was a. I once thought that to be accepted, I had to change, say the right things, live up to expectations, eat it myself, like they edited the photo. But I was wrong. And this time it was a. You don't have to fit into the old frame to be loved. You don't need permission to show up. It took me years to realize that. And this time it was a. The truth doesn't need an apology to be told. And you don't need to prove your worth to exist. And this time it was a. If you're still reading, if you've ever been called shameful, different G. If you ever been cut out of a photo, and this time it was a conversation, or your family story, remember this: you are not a blank space. You are a whole person. And you deserve to exist as you are. And this time it was a. And if no one gives you a place in their frame, build your own. Because in that frame, you won't be edited. You won't be cropped out. And this time it was a. You won't be forgotten. There will be just you. Whole, clear, and fully alive.